and go.
Now,
So,
the beauty of this machine is it does all the work for you. Now, I'm going to stop it. I have a little bit of flour left, but I'm going to stop it and switch to the dough hook, which is this tool. I prefer the paddle attachment for mixing, but then I like the dough hook for the kneading. So we're going to change the hook, and then we're going to knead the dough for 5 minutes by the clock. And if you don't have a machine, you're going to have to knead it by hand for 8 to 10 minutes, which is kind of a workout. You can develop good biceps doing that. But I'll show you how to do it by hand after this is kneaded. I can't show you now, but I'll show you that later. And this you do at a rather slow rate. You don't want to overwork your mixer. It goes up to about number 2. You don't go much. Sometimes you mix on a high speed for different things, but not for kneading. It's too hard on the motor of the mixer. Okay. Now lock your mixer, and then just get up to 2. Now we're going to do this for 5 minutes by the clock, which I will do here. Let's see if we can clear that.
and any other bits of advice, Mom?
Pardon me?
Any other advice?
I told you about the eggs, temperature of the yeast.
Say that again with the eggs and the temperature, because
The temperature of the yeast should be between 105 and 115 degrees. And I use a thermometer. Now you don't have a thermometer, just stick your finger in the water and it should feel nice and warm. Like you should, they say if you put your toe in bath water, you go, ah, it's just right. So that's how you tell the temperature of the water. Now sometimes there are doughs that you refrigerate, so the yeast does okay there, but it has to take like 24 hours to overnight for the yeast to be activated. So when you're doing it fresh like this, 105 to 115, mix it well, and the eggs perform better if they're at room temperature when you're baking. So it's hard to anticipate. Sometimes you're going to make something later, and then you get, oh, I forgot to take the eggs out of the refrigerator. So then put it in a glass of water, a cup of cold water, not hot, cold. Just let it gradually come up to room temperature, at least take the chill off the egg. Now it's not crucial if you don't do it, it'll function anyway. You get just a tad better performance if the egg is cozy and warm at room temperature.
okay.
You see, now to me that dough looks pretty good. Like it doesn't need much more flour, but I still have some here if it gets like it needs it.
How do you know it needs it?
If it's wet, sticky, some doughs will say this should be wet and sticky, but this particular one doesn't. So, and then down there at the very bottom, you can see it's a little bit clinging to the bowl, so I'm going to add a little bit more flour. You want the dough to pull away from the bowl.
It's a whole lot easier than kneading it by hand.
It sure is. Now, if you're going to do a lot of bread baking, save your money and buy yourself a mixer. It's really much more pleasant to deal with. And they're getting cheaper, too. You need a good strong one that has a dough hook. And they also come with this attachment, which is for mixing egg whites and whipped cream, the whipping attachment. So you get 3 attachments with your mixer. A little bit soft down at the bottom. You see, it's better to do this slowly than to throw it all in and not need it. Now, if you want, you can stop it. Now, this dough has been kneaded for 5 minutes in the machine, and it's okay, but I just want to show you how to do it manually so you'll know how to do it. Now, this particular tool is called a bench scraper. And for some doughs, this particular dough is pretty firm. And some doughs are really soft and hard to maneuver. So you use the bench scraper to toss it around, like this. And it's also good later for cleaning up your board. It also could be used when you're chopping a lot of vegetables, to scoop up the vegetables and transport it. Now, if you're going to do kneading by hand, you take your wrist, your fist, or the palm of your hand, push in, turn the dough. Push in, turn the dough. Push in, turn the dough. And you keep this up for 8 minutes. So it's, as I say, it's a workout. And the way you could tell if a dough has been kneaded enough, I've heard a couple of ways. One is if you take off a piece and it stretches, it doesn't spring back, it's kneaded enough. This has been done by the machine, of course. And the other one that I use all the time is you take your hands, put your hands on the dough, leave it there for 10 seconds, and if you can lift your hands without the dough sticking to it, it's been kneaded enough, okay? So now this recipe calls for oiling the bowl. Some do, some don't, but this one does. So we're going to take a little oil. Now the reason they do this is that after the dough has been put away for rising, sometimes it forms a scab on it. And the
And
oil,
that's just olive oil that we have there.
anything would do, spray, whatever you have. Now I just usually plop it in and turn it so that it's covered with oil. Then they always say to cover it with plastic wrap. I don't like doing that because, for a start, I think it's a waste of plastic wrap. And at home, I have a pot that I put on top of my bowl. It creates like a little proofing cupboard, if you will. The bakers do that. They have regular.
I have a glass lid that would work. Do you want that?
Okay, we can do that. Or another thing you can do is you take a towel, a hand towel, and moisten it. Just not sloppy wet, just moisten, and put it on top.
Do you want to do that? Which way do you like?
Well, we can do this. I'll just moisten this a little bit. And the reason you moisten it, with some doughs, English muffins come to mind, they get very sticky. And this way they won't stick as much to the towel. And that's why I use the bowl, because I've scraped a lot of dough off the towels in my life. Okay, now we're going to put this aside until it's doubled in volume. And in this recipe they suggest about an hour. So I'm going to put it here because you want it in a warm place, free of drafts. So I'm just going to put it there. Again, at my house I put it on top of my water heater because that's a warm place, and it's in my closet just down the hall. But if you find a place where you can put it where it'll be safe and away from drafts and reasonably warm, roughly around 70 degrees. You don't have hot. Alrighty, so we're going to leave that now and come back in an hour or so when the dough has doubled in volume.